Good morning. Or good afternoon, actually. It's Sunday, and I'm back with another book to read featuring a Black character as part of Corinne Neal's project in Black history. Corinne has asked us to focus on Black women, and I'm about a week late in doing that, but I'm delighted to share with you a book about this Black woman whose name is Rosa Parks. Rosa Parks happens to be one of my heroines because of her courage, her tenacity, her refusal to give in to injustice, and the fact that she did this as a woman in a time when women in leadership were rare. And so this is Rosa. This is a doll that is a replica of Rosa Parks. I'm going to set her down carefully. And I'd like to share with you this book called Rosa. This is a book written by the amazing Nikki Giovanni, and again with illustrations by someone that will be familiar to you by now if you've been listening to me read, the illustrator Bryan Collier. This book was a Caldecott Honor book, and it was a winner of the Coretta Scott King Award. This is not a fiction book. This is a nonfiction book. It's a biography. And a biography is a story about a real person, sharing information about the life of that real person. So let's read a little bit about Rosa. This is the frontispiece, which is the opening picture of a book. And this is a paperback, so the pages may be a little bit floppy, and I apologize for that. Let me get to a place where you can see the pictures. Mrs. Parks was having a good day. Mother was getting over that touch of flu and was up and moving about this morning for breakfast. Her husband, Raymond Parks, one of the best barbers in the county, had been asked to take on extra work at the Air Force Base. And the first day of December was always special because you could sort of feel Christmas in the air. Everybody knew the alterations department would soon be very, very busy. Mrs. Parks would laugh each year with the other seamstresses and say, "Those elves in the North Pole have nothing on us." The women of Montgomery, both young and older, would come in with their fancy holiday dresses that needed adjustments, or their Sunday suits and blouses that needed just a touch, a flower or some velvet trimming or something to make the ladies look festive. Rosa Parks was the best seamstress. The needle and thread flew through her hands like gold spinning from Rumpelstiltskin's loom. The other seamstresses would tease her and say she used magic. Rosa would laugh. "Not magic. Just concentration," she would say. Some days she would skip lunch to be finished on time. This Thursday, they had gotten a bit ahead of schedule. "Why don't you go home, Rosa?" said the supervisor. "I know your mother is feeling poorly, and you ought to look in on her." The supervisor knew that Rosa would stay until the work was done, but it was only December 1st, no need to push. Rosa appreciated that. Now she should get home early, and since Raymond would be working late, maybe she could surprise him with a meatloaf, his favorite. "See you in the morning," Rosa waved goodbye and headed for the bus stop. She fiddled in her pocket for the dime so that she would not have to ask for change. When she stepped up to drop her dime in, she was smiling in anticipation of the nice dinner that she would make. As was the evil custom, she then got off the bus and went to the back door to re-enter the bus from the rear. Rosa saw that the section reserved for Blacks was full, but she noticed that the neutral section, the part of the bus where Blacks or whites could sit, had 3 seats. The left side of the aisle had 2 seats, and the right side had a man who was sitting next to the window. Rosa decided to sit next to him. She did not remember his name, but she knew his face. His son Jimmy came frequently to the NAACP Youth Council meetings. They exchanged pleasantries as the bus pulled away from the curb. Rosa settled her sewing bag and her purse near her knees, trying not to crowd Jimmy's father. Men took up more space, she was thinking, as she tried to squish her packages closer. The bus made several more stops, and the two seats opposite her were soon filled by other Blacks. She sat on her side of the aisle, daydreaming about her good day and planning her special meal for her husband. "I said, give me those seats," the bus driver bellowed. Mrs. Parks looked up in surprise. The two men on the opposite side of the aisle were rising to move into the crowded Black section. Jimmy's father muttered to himself, "I don't feel like trouble today. I'm going to move." Mrs. Parks stood to let him out, looked at James Blake, the bus driver, and then sat back down. "You better make it easy on yourself," Blake yelled. "Why do you pick on us?" Mrs. Parks asked, with that quiet strength of hers. "I'm going to call the police," Blake threatened. "Do what you must," Mrs. Parks quietly replied. She was not frightened. She was not going to give in to that which was wrong. Some of the white people were saying aloud, "She ought to be arrested. Take her off this bus." Some of the Black people, recognizing the potential for ugliness, got off the bus. Others stayed on, saying among themselves, "That's the neutral section. She has a right to be there." Mrs. Parks sat. As Mrs. Parks sat, waiting for the police to come, she thought of all the brave men and women, boys and girls, who stood tall for civil rights. She recited in her mind the 1954 Brown versus Board of Education decision, in which the United States Supreme Court ruled that separate is inherently unequal. She sighed as she realized that she was tired, not just tired from work, but tired of putting white people first, tired of stepping off sidewalks to let white people pass, tired of eating at separate lunch counters and learning at separate schools. She was tired of colored entrances, colored balconies, colored drinking fountains, colored taxis. She was tired of getting somewhere first and being waited on last, tired of separate, and definitely tired of not equal. She thought about her mother and her grandmother and knew that she would want her to be strong. She had not sought this moment, but she was ready for it. When the policeman bent down to ask, "Auntie, are you going to move?" all the strength of all the people through all those many years joined in her. Rosa Parks said, "No." Joanne Robinson was at the Piggly Wiggly when she learned of the arrest. She had stopped in to purchase a box of macaroni and cheese. She always served macaroni and cheese with red snapper for dinner. A sister member of the Women's Political Council approached her just as she reached the checkout line. "Not Mrs. Parks," Mrs. Robinson exclaimed. She then looked around. "Pass the word that everybody should meet me at my office at 10 o'clock tonight," she said. Mrs. Robinson was also Dr. Robinson, a professor at Alabama State, the college designated for colored people, and she was the newly elected president of the Women's Political Council. She rushed home to put dinner on the table, cleaned up, and put the kids to bed. She kissed her husband goodbye and hurried to the college. It was dark when they finally gathered. The 25 women first held hands in prayer in hopes that they were doing the right thing. After all, they were going to use the stencil maker, printer, and paper of Alabama State without permission. If they were caught at the college, they could all be arrested for trespassing. But they were working to undermine a vicious law. They decided that they would stand under the umbrella of courage that Rosa Parks had raised, keeping off the reins of fear and self-disgust. The women quickly formed groups to carry out each task. Making the stencils was the most difficult because the machine keys had to be struck very hard so that the letters would be clearly readable. If a mistake was made, the whole page had to be thrown out, and it took a lot of concentration. They came together in a great mass meeting, the Women's Political Council, the NAACP, and all the churches. They needed someone to speak for them, to give voice to the injustice. Everyone agreed that the Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. would be ideal. "We will stay off the buses," Dr. King said. "We will walk until justice runs down like water and righteousness like a mighty stream." And the people walked. They walked in the rain. They walked in the hot sun. They walked early in the morning. They walked late at night. They walked at Christmas. They walked at Easter. They walked on the 4th of July. They walked on Labor Day. They walked on Thanksgiving. And then it was almost Christmas again. And still they walked. People from all over the United States sent shoes and coats and money so that the citizens of Montgomery could walk instead of taking the bus. Everyone was proud of their nonviolent movement, and the sole force that bound the community together would sustain many marches for the years of struggle that were yet to come. On November 13th, 1956, almost a year after the arrest of Rosa Parks, the Supreme Court of the United States ruled that segregation on the buses, like segregation in the schools, was illegal. Segregation was wrong. Rosa Parks said no, so that the Supreme Court could remind the nation that the Constitution of the United States makes no provision for second-class citizenship. We are all equal under the law, and we all are entitled to its protection. The integrity, the dignity, the quiet strength of Rosa Parks turned her no into a yes for change. What does this story teach us? What does Rosa Parks' life teach us? It teaches us that every place that injustice lives, and it lives in so many places, injustice lives in places where people are treated differently because of the color of their skin, because of their gender, because of where they come from, because of where they live, because of what they look like, because of what they wear, because of what they believe, because of the church that they go to, or the temple, or the synagogue, or that they don't go to. Injustice lives in so many places, but what Rosa Parks' life teaches us is that it takes one person to stand up and say, no, no, I'm not going to allow this injustice to continue to take place. That one person saying no makes a difference. That one person saying no can lead to a quiet revolution, like the revolution that Rosa Parks led. where the Black people of Montgomery refused to take the buses. Their refusal to take the buses, their determination to walk instead, cost the bus companies a great deal of money. And that great deal of money caused, eventually, a law to be changed. It took one woman. It took this woman to stand up, or rather to sit down, and say no. No, I'm not moving. I have a right to be here. That's the lesson that we learn from the life of Rosa Parks. I hope that you enjoyed this book. Nikki Giovanni is a gifted writer, and Bryan Collier, as you know, is one of my favorite illustrators. And so I'm delighted to share this book with you today. And I hope that you have a great week and that you have a good rest of your Sunday. Thank you for listening.